Welcome to Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange community, where leading practitioners in integrative health approaches will discuss how they solve the most challenging and common health issues. These regular Q&A discussions are designed to take a deep dive into case studies and integrative approaches in order to elevate the collective knowledge of both experienced and new practitioners alike. Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange, your community for functional medicine.
All right. Welcome to the Health Intelligence Exchange, everyone. I'm Jeremy Maleka, CEO of Biocanic, and I'm joined today by our guest, Roudy Nassif from VivaRays, and we'll be discussing how blue light blocking supports circadian health. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you never miss an episode. And for those of you joining us live today, we'll be transitioning to a live Q&A towards the end of this presentation. So feel free to start posting your questions in the comments below. Roudy is at the cutting edge of circadian health as an engineer, wellness entrepreneur, martial artist, and light expert. He's been educating thousands of health practitioners and doctors about the profound impacts of light on health and helping them optimize their personal as well as their patients' well-being. But it hasn't always been that way. There was a time when Roudy struggled with ADHD, depression, and chronic fatigue. His journey took an unexpected turn when he accidentally discovered the power of light and darkness on health. This journey led him to create VivaRays, a company on a mission to help more than 1 million people live in rhythm with nature's light and dark cycles. Roudy engineered the world's first circadian glasses to filter out the bad effects of artificial light coming from screens and indoor light bulbs. What we'll uncover today might surprise you and could change everything you thought you knew about health. So thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome, Roudy.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to start, love to hear about your personal journey, specifically how you struggle with ADHD, depression, fatigue, and how you discovered kind of circadian rhythm health.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a radical moment. It's like in Canada, 1 a.m., March 2017. I'm literally lying in bed next to my former partner in our dark basement in Canada, scrolling through my phone. Mm-hmm. It's 1 a.m. and the blue light is shining on my face. And I remember this moment very well because my eyes are literally burning and I'm feeling so drained physically and mentally, but I'm super wired and I can't stop scrolling. Now, suddenly a video popped up on my feed and I almost skipped it, but something made me click on this video. And it says, artificial light is killing us. So I'm sitting there like literally squeezing my brain, barely understanding what Dr. Jack Roos is talking. But this time something was different because I wake up the second day and there's this one sentence that continued to pop up in my mind. And it says, you can't get healthy in the same light environment that made you sick. And I was like, whoa, could this be the reason for everything I've been going through? The lack of energy, the constant fatigue, the depression. And to be honest, from this moment on and for the past 7 years, I've been studying the light problem extensively. And what I discovered is something I knew very early on when I was a little kid, that the quality of our life is entirely dependent on the quality of the spectrum of light that is entering our eyes. And this goes way beyond avoiding screens 1 hour before bedtime or wearing cheap blue blocking glasses. I think like the light problem is a lot more nuanced than this, and light impact us in every way possible. And for me, like it literally started when I was a little kid at school. I grew up in Lebanon, and I was really like the definition of the ADHD kid who can't focus, and the classroom has always left me drained. It felt like a prison cell, and all I wanted is to escape that prison. So I turned into a troublemaker, and I'd strategically do crazy things so that the teacher kicked me out of the school. And by the time I was 17 years old, I was asked to leave 7 different schools. So the teachers thought that I'm crazy, literally, and my parents thought that I'm completely hopeless. Mm-hmm. And thinking about this time like the crazy thing is like every time I caused chaos, every time I caused disruption, there was only one thing that my soul was desperately craving. And it's simply being outside and allowing myself to soak in sunlight and being in nature. And on the opposite side, I was asked to sit down like a robot, mindlessly memorizing and repeating information and sitting under fluorescent lighting that was literally frying my brain from the inside out. So that was very disconnecting. And as I grew older, like I became extremely exhausted and tired from fighting and from resisting. So I did the most heartbreaking thing imaginable. I gave up, and I literally gave up on myself. And during that time, I became like a creature of the night, like completely disconnected from myself, staying up very late, watching videos, scrolling on the internet, partying, doing drugs, watching porn, and then waking up the second day feeling completely exhausted, low on energy, and unmotivated all day long. And the interesting thing is, even though I managed to get to engineering school, for people around me, I looked like a young, fit, successful engineer on the outside. But frankly, on the inside, I was literally drowning. I completely lost connection with myself, with my purpose, and my health started declining like really fast. And no matter what I tried, like martial arts, biomechanics, even climbing freezing mountains with Wim Hof at minus 20 degrees, not like nothing seemed to last. And to be honest, Jeremy, like um I tried like literally every diet imaginable, like veganism, vegetarian, ketosis, carnivore, ancestral diet. And I was taking all the best adaptogens and supplements for brain health and mitochondrial health, but still I felt the same. So that's when I believe, like, looking back, I took like the most radical decision of my life. It was very scary, but essentially I decided to completely leave my career as an engineer. I no longer cared about my reputation or my CV or what others expected of me as an engineer. And I decided to travel on a tourist visa, and with the idea that I want to rediscover who I am and I want to find a way to reconnect back to that inherent well-being that I've always been connected to as a kid. And out of all the countries that I applied to, as a Lebanese person, by the way, it's very difficult to travel. So I applied to 20 countries and I got rejected time after time. And the only country that I got accepted was Canada. So that's how I ended up in this dark basement in Canada at 1 a.m. watching that video that absolutely changed my life. And about a few weeks after watching that video, my former partner was really desperate because I was getting like suicidal depressive. So she comes to me with an unexpected surprise, and she says, "Hey, Rudy, like pack your stuff. We're going to volunteer on an organic farm in northern Quebec." And I was like, my face turned like pale yellow, and I'm like, how the heck like shoveling cow manure is going to change my life? And so we ended up going, and we drove for 7 hours from Ontario to Quebec, and we arrived at night to this rural farm in Quebec. And when we arrived, there is like literally like no electricity, no artificial light, and something that I haven't seen in many, many, many years. It's like a canopy of like twinkling stars, so brilliant, so alive. That it felt like wow, like it felt like the universe is welcoming me home for the first time in my entire adult life. So we literally put up our tent at night and we went to bed. And I wake up the second day. It's day one. I think it was May 2017, and I wake up feeling exhausted. Literally, like my body is so heavy, and I'm feeling extremely depressed. And the last thing I want is to go outside and speak to farmers. So it's very hard. But then it's very interesting because by day three, something absolutely magical happens. I wake up with no alarm clock. And for the first time in my entire adult life, literally, I feel like energy surging through my veins like electricity.
Mhm.
And I was, wow, like I look at my partner and as though I'm seeing her for the first time in my life. I open the door of the tent, I go outside, and I look around me, and it's absolutely mesmerizing. And what I realized in this moment is like, wow, like I have not been able to see the beauty around me, and it hit me so deep because for the first time ever, I felt like this overwhelming sense of beauty and and connection to everything around me. So I was literally like tearing up. And what's really fascinating is that the night owl in me who stayed up late until 3 a.m. is now sleeping shortly after the sunset, naturally and effortlessly.
Mhm.
So there's like so many different profound experiences that I had there, but the one that touched me the most is like this day I was like on the field, uh, like weeding the crops, and the farmer walks over to me, and he places his warm hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Wow, Rudy, like what a powerful focus you have. I've never seen anything like it." And and to me it was like I literally froze, and like everything around me stopped, and it was like an absolutely intense moment because for about like 27 years I lived in a paradigm of being the ADHD kid who can't focus, and for the first time
Mhm.
ever I did realize that my old paradigm was literally getting shattered in front of my eyes.
Mhm.
And everything I thought to be wrong with me, my ADHD, my depression, my chronic fatigue, it wasn't about me. It
Mhm.
was my light environment.
Mhm. Wow. It's such an incredible story. So, let's kind of maybe dig into the science a little bit. So, what exactly, when we talk about light and circadian rhythms, why are they foundational overall health, and maybe why were they so foundational to the impacts that it's having on your personal depression and ADHD?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess like what had occurred on the farm naturally is as I start living with the farmers, I was being exposed to a lot of natural sunlight during the day
Mhm.
and darkness at night. And naturally also we had like an eating rhythm where
Mhm.
we ate at the same time every day, and we had our biggest meal when the sun is up, and
Mhm.
we literally like fast when the sun is down. Now it turns out that light and the timing of when we're exposed to light as well as the timing of our food are the two primarily fundamental forces that reset our circadian rhythm.
Mhm.
And so just to give like some context, circadian essentially comes from the Latin word circa and dia. It means like approximately a day or 24 hour. And it's this cycle and that rhythm that exists for all of us, like animals, humans, and plants. We all live on this earth, and we experience an unescapable daily change in our environment where the day turns into night and the night turns back into a day. And that cycles happen in a 24-hour period. Now, in order for us as a species to adapt to this daily change, we had to develop a mechanism inside our body to essentially allow us to shift our biology from alertness to rest. And it happens and it manifests as in an internal clock that sits in our brain, which determine literally when we go to sleep, rest and rejuvenate and heal, and when we wake up, so that we are in action and we essentially produce productive work. And what's really fascinating is that this clock literally controls every aspect of our being. Like it controls our energy levels, it controls our detoxification systems, our bowel movement, it controls fertility and reproduction, it controls our mood, and it determines when we release dopamine, when we release serotonin, and it even control our digestion. So it's literally responsible for timing all of these different biological functions to the right time of the day during a 24-hour cycle. And what's fascinating about biology is, as a biological being, our body is not designed to do everything at the same time. There's a right place and a right time for everything. And when the body performs the right thing at the right time, then it creates miracles and everything flows effortlessly. But when we have disrupted signaling that cause us to perform the wrong thing at the wrong time, this is where our biology gets completely disrupted. As an example of this, we are meant to have a lot of melatonin in our system after the sunset, and that literally gives the signaling of autophagy, mitophagy, and apoptosis, so that our cells can like replace old cells with new cells and repair themselves. Now, in our modern world, 95% of people have a disrupted signal, because think about your living room. It's no longer like how our ancestors lived. Our ancestors were around a bonfire after the sunset. And this is the light that our biology is expecting when the sun sets. Now, take a moment and think about your living room. LED lights in the ceiling, the phone is in your hand, the TV is glowing. And this light is not one like 20 lux like the fire, or one lux like the full moon. It's literally 500 to 1,000 lux, meaning it's 1,000 times brighter than what nature intended. And this literally sends a signal to our brain that's daytime when it's actually nighttime, and it completely disrupts all of our hormones. So you could think of this central clock as a conductor of a musical symphony. And just like the conductor reads the musical notes coming from the musical sheet and cues the musician to create harmonious music, this clock in our brain also reads the signal from sunlight and darkness, and it guides every cell and every organ in the body when to work and when to rest, and which hormones to produce and which hormone to stop producing. So when we produce the right hormone at the right time, we produce harmonious music in the form of optimal well-being. And when we start secreting the wrong hormone at the wrong time, the body start producing dissonant music, which start appearing in different forms of chronic issues. And the two main forces that are literally controlling whether this clock is working properly or not is, number one, getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning, and number two is getting consistent darkness after the sunset. Now, add to this a proper rhythm in when you eat, and you have an absolutely phenomenal circadian rhythm, which occurred to me on the farm without needing to make any effort. It literally removed me from an environment that is making me sick, and it put me in an environment where I was back to balance, back to the roots, and back to Mother Nature.
Yeah, it's funny because as you're speaking, it reminds me. So prior to being at Biocanic, I was essentially an executive at a medical device company. And before I started getting into the industry, I would go to a hotel room, and it'd be 10 o'clock at night. I'd have the TV on. I'd fall asleep with the TV on, right? Wouldn't necessarily have the blackout curtains. And anybody that knows our story now, we travel with like electrical tape, and we're like very militant. But maybe kind of walk through like what the effect of that kind of situation, sleeping with the TV on, or going to bed doom scrolling as you were in the dark basement, and how that kind of relates to what it means on the health impacts from more of a like a hormonal, and what are kind of the downstream effects when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, our body is expecting darkness after the sunset. And when the brain is exposed to this bright light after the sunset, it confuses the brain into thinking it's midday at midnight. And this is essentially, it does something absolutely tragic to the body that most health experts today have no idea about. It's not the mistake of health experts, because I did realize that most health experts literally are not taught that light is the most powerful force that essentially tell the brain about the time of the day and also controls our endocrine system and our circadian system. So the blue light from the screens trick the brain into producing cortisol at night instead of the sleep hormone melatonin. And I want to highlight that cortisol is very helpful first thing in the morning when sunlight enters our eyes, because it literally wakes us up and it allows us to feel alert, energized, and ready for the day. But at night, it leaves us wired, anxious, and overly stimulated. And that's why most people today, they are deluding themselves into thinking that they get their most productive time at night when the sun sets. But what they don't realize is that light is a drug and it's completely disrupting their hormonal production, causing them to feel wired at the wrong time of the day. Now, there's a downstream effect from there, because if you think about it, one of the cortisol's job is essentially literally to give your muscles sugar so you can run away from a predator. Imagine yourself back in nature when you are faced with a tiger. Cortisol saved your life because it allowed you to run or fight and flight, essentially. But what's really interesting is that with all these artificial lights on, according to the German scientist Fritz Hollweich, your body is essentially as though it's constantly running away from a predator, even though there's no predator in the room. And here's what, or like, Hollweich proved it in a very interesting way. And I think at the beginning it happened accidentally, because he took people, a group of people with cataracts in their eye, meaning that no light could penetrate the retina into their brain. And he measured their stress hormones, cortisol and ACTH, and what he saw is that without light entering their eyes, their hormones were an absolute mess, and cortisol were abnormally low. But here's what happened. After their cataracts were surgically removed and sunlight could once again enter their eyes, their hormone levels normalized, just like a flower blooming after the winter. So this is when Hollweich asked himself a very interesting question. He said, okay, what will happen if I bring a group of healthy individuals and I ask them to sit under fluorescent lighting, the same light that is in our offices, the gyms, the classroom? And what happened next is absolutely shocking, because their bodies literally went into a full-on stress mode. And he started observing that their cortisol level was spiking as if they were being chased by a predator. Now, it's really interesting, because think about this for a moment. For millions of years, we only experience this form of stress when facing actual death. But today, if we think about it, our living room at night, every single night, is causing the same chronic biological alarming response every single night. And this literally spikes our blood glucose level without eating a single bite. So I know so many health practitioners who are trying to help people who are struggling with diabetes and whatnot, and they're trying to help them by controlling the food intake. But the problem is that no matter what you eat, if you are sitting in a light environment that is constantly flooding your body with the wrong signal, no matter how much you try to control your food intake, your blood glucose level is going to be a mess. And when your blood glucose is unstable, it literally affects everything: your mood, your thinking, and your craving. Now, what's really interesting about this is sunlight does the opposite. There's some recent studies that were published showing that the red and infrared spectrum of the sun essentially regulate blood glucose level. I think they took two group of people who were eating exactly the same thing. One group of people was eating indoors without being exposed to sunlight, and the other group of people was eating outdoors while being exposed to red and infrared light. And the group of people who was exposed to sunlight, they had their blood glucose level regulating really fast after their meal compared to the group of people who were eating indoors. So if we think about all of this, essentially, most people think that they have a blood sugar problem, but in my view, we don't oftentimes we have a light problem, and this even could cause insulin resistance, because it causes your insulin to spike as it tries to essentially lower your blood glucose back to normal. And the interesting thing is that cortisol suppresses the effect of insulin because it wants to direct the glucose to the muscles instead of the cell. So over time, this chronic exposure causing cortisol and insulin to spike at the same time start causing insulin resistance and even type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, it's super interesting. There's been so many different studies on sleep and the effect of poor sleep on morning appetite, right? So having that dysregulation that then drives essentially the need to be hungry because of all of the things that you mentioned. Some people, like if you've got your sleep dialed in and you have a bad night of sleep, you'll really pick up on it. I know that I do personally when that happens. And then the other thing is around kind of, you talk about living room lights. Imagine being in a hospital, having surgery and recovery, and the effect, and what are the lights in a hospital, right?
Yes, absolutely. Like we're literally baking under fluorescent and LED lighting that are literally like baking our brain from the inside out.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's the environment that is supposed to be the place where we're going to heal or where we're going to repair, but essentially we're sitting under a light environment that is essentially making us sick. And it's very interesting also that you're mentioning like hunger level, and there's also like a collateral effect between light exposure and hunger hormones. It's really interesting because blue light essentially elevates our hunger hormone ghrelin. And it makes so much sense because as hunter-gatherers, when the sun rises and we're exposed to all this blue light from the sun, it elevates our hunger hormone ghrelin so that we go out and hunt and forage. Now, the interesting thing is when we are exposed to the frequency of blue light that is coming from LED screens at night, this exposure at the wrong time of the day elevates our hunger hormone ghrelin. And it also suppresses leptin, the hormone that tells the brain that we're feeling full. And when leptin is suppressed at night, the body flips a biological switch. So instead of leptin traveling up to the hypothalamus and upregulating the thyroid, the pituitary and the thyroid, so we can stop burning fat at night when we're sleeping, we shut down completely that process. And we essentially shut our ability from burning fat at night when we sleep. And this is often when people get those late night Netflix cravings when they're watching that Netflix movie, because the body thinks that it's starving because literally your lights are lying to it. And I believe also that there's a large observational study by the NIH that found that women who are exposed to artificial light after the sunset, or who sleep with lights on like TV and whatnot, like they observed that they were more likely to gain at least 11 pounds over the time of the observational study.
Wow, it's an incredible impact. So for our practitioners, they're doing a lot of blood work, advanced hormone testing, so looking at cortisol dysregulation, among other things. Is there any specific symptoms or certain challenges that might stick out where circadian disruption might be one of the cornerstone root causes? Obviously if somebody came to a a kid with ADHD and depression like you were, their first course of action is not thinking, hey, there's circadian disruption. How would you kind of change that conversation around?
I truly think that the moment we disrupt that absolutely essential polar opposite connection between melatonin and cortisol, it has downstreaming effect on every hormone in the body. And what's really interesting about light is I like there's no one hormone in the body that is not profoundly impacted and that is not essentially manufactured in the presence of light. So even when we think about, for example, like fertility, the master sex hormone pregnenolone is literally made in the inner membrane of the mitochondria in response to morning sunlight. And then pregnenolone is the raw material from which the stress hormone cortisol arise, and also the sex hormones estrogen and testosterone and progesterones are made. So light literally becomes fertility hormones. And when we first wake up and light enter our eyes, hopefully sunlight, the body converts some of that pregnenolone into cortisol, so it wakes us up. And essentially under balanced conditions, the body converts the rest of the pregnenolone to youth hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which are important to keep your energy levels up, but they're also very important to maintain youthful looking skin and hair. However, what's really interesting is that our mitochondria in the body are literally sensors of our environment. They're constantly like sensing what is occurring and what is going on. And when the mitochondria senses a threat in the environment, like a tiger chasing us, the pregnenolone converts and gets diverted from fertility pathways into more stress hormone cortisol. And what's also very interesting is that psychological stress can cause the same effect. So essentially, if you're stressing out about life or worrying a lot about different things and projecting fears in your consciousness that are essentially continuously putting you in a stressful mode, the same effect can happen. But also, according to Fritz Holwisch, exposure to artificial or to the wrong frequency of light can cause that same debilitating effect. So to answer your question, it's very interesting because I highly recommend the book, the Circadian Code. If anybody has not read it yet, it's absolutely wonderful, and it has great citations. But there's on page 6 in the book, there's a section that is very interesting. It says what happens when circadian rhythm break down, and there's this like big list of issues that occur. I'm gonna just list a few of them. So leaky gut, indigestion, heartburn, stomach pain, childhood obesity, type 2 diabetes, stroke, heart arrhythmia, fatty liver disease, breast cancer, living fibrosis, colon cancer, living cancer, lung cancer, ADHD, autism, SAD, anxiety, panic attack, depression. So essentially, there's a really long list of chronic issues. And the author makes a great point that when you are smoking cigarettes, there's a direct negative impact on your lungs. The issue with circadian biology, the moment you disrupt your circadian biology, you're literally essentially disrupting every aspect of your well-being, because the circadian clock is responsible of turning on and off the different genes and the different gene expression. So if you are somebody who essentially have the tendency to have acne and you disrupt your circadian biology, that disruption will show itself as acne. If generically speaking, you have the tendency for like obesity, that disruption will show itself in the form of obesity. So Sachin Panda in the book makes a great point that while smoking is bad for the liver, getting the wrong type of light at the wrong time of the day and disrupting your circadian biology literally has a detrimental effect on every aspect of your biology. It's very hard to be measured.
So how early do you believe that light-related circadian disruption begins affecting people in modern environments? Is this something that is accumulated over time, or can it start as soon as you walk into the modern environment?
So essentially, we now know that one night of artificial light exposure can alter your circadian biology and shift it forward for about an hour and a half or 2 hours every single day. So in a matter of a week or even less than a week, you could be living in the United States, but your brain is thinking it's in China. So I think we all had experienced the terrible effect of jet lag when we travel from one time zone to another. We wake up in the morning and the body is really fatigued no matter what we try to do, and we feel foggy and unable to think with clarity. Our sleep is terrible. We eat food and it's hard to digest the food. So this is a great example of essentially what occurs when our circadian biology is disrupted. Now, what's really interesting is that in today's world, we live in a chronic circadian disruption. So much so that we essentially are living inside of a box of altered of an altered state where we are completely oblivious and blind to what reality would look like outside of that box. And it's like you're feeding somebody McDonald's every single day, and it's not until they stop eating McDonald's, they go to this organic farm and they start eating nourishing food, that they realize the impact of what McDonald's had on them. And while they were in the box eating McDonald's all the time, they had no perception of what life is like if they were to stop McDonald's. So the danger of the circadian disruption that we are in today, I think the negative impacts start occurring from day one, and most of us have become numb to it, and we've become so oblivious to the quality of life that we all could access if we go back to the roots, if we go back to balance, if we go back to resetting our circadian biology. And the easiest way to discover this to yourself is go camping for 3 days. And during those 3 days, make sure you're not using any technology that exposes you to artificial light at night. And what will naturally start occurring is you will notice that every cell in the body will go back to the roots and will go back to a rhythm that is so inherently alive in us, that has this intelligence that runs all of our biology in an effortless way. And what start occurring naturally is we'll notice that we will start feeling drowsy shortly after the sunset. We go to bed and we have an absolutely restful night's sleep, nothing like we've ever experienced before. We wake up first thing in the morning and we spring out of bed with wonderful, joyful, springy energy, and our appetite is really healthy in the first hours of the day. We have high appetite, and our bowel movement is consistent, and it happens within an hour of waking up. Our brain is sharp and ready to solve big problems, and within the first half of the day, we achieve so much that the second half is essentially like that we've achieved so much that we feel so much satisfaction that we take the rest of the day for hanging out with friends and doing things that we enjoy, and exploring our hobbies. From my personal experience, I had witnessed this happening again and again, particularly when friends of mine who live in cities come and visit me here in Mexico, where I live 100% circadian. And what I mean by this is I allow the natural rhythm of sunlight and darkness to guide every aspect of my life, and I don't alter this rhythm. And when my friends come here, and within the third day of living here, the first 3 days are quite weird for them. They're like, what is going on? Like, why there's no lights after the sunset? It's so scary. They're feeling uncomfortable. But within the third day, something absolutely miraculous happened, and it's as though naturally every person I had witnessed go through this process is as though they come back to a part of themselves that they had always been in touch with and had lost, and they feel this like awe, a moment of awe. Is like, wow, finally I am myself again. And truly, I invite everybody on the call to run this experiment. Just go camping for 3 days and attune yourself to the natural rhythm and see what happens.
Yeah, no, it's such an amazing impact when you're able to do it, especially if you live in a big city and you're not having that ability to get exposure. So I want to shift gears and talk about VivaRays. Obviously, I'm wearing mine. I've got my extra ones here, my different shades here as well. So how you want to explain, how did you come to kind of building this approach? There's most of our practitioners really understand, and they're using blue blockers. There's any number of 1,000 different Chinese manufacturers on Amazon. So I'd love to hear kind of the backstory of the product, how it works, and take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to my story on the farm. After I had discovered or realized that everything that was wrong with me, my ADHD, my depression, my chronic fatigue, I finally realized it wasn't about me. It was my light environment. I left the farm and I came back to the city. And within a matter of few weeks, it all comes crashing back at me. The night owl tendency, the brain fog, the depression. And in this moment, I refused to go back to my old self. And I looked myself in the mirror and I'm like, I'm not going back. So I made a commitment to myself, and I literally turned into a mad scientist, with the farms becoming my laboratory. So for over 4 or 5 years, I kept traveling back between the farm and the city, living on farms with indigenous people up in northern Canada, in a way that is in complete alignment with nature's light and dark cycles. And I was documenting every shift in my sleep, in my energy, in my mood, and devouring every book, every study I could find on the science of light. So during that period, it was very disturbing for me, because I would go on the farm and I would live my best life. Within 3 days, I find myself extremely energetic. I would go into states of inspiration, and I would start reconnecting to that creator in me that I've always been connected to when I was a kid and that I had lost. And sure enough, when I go back to the city, within a matter of few days, I will feel disoriented again, and I would start losing my rhythm. So during that period, I was so desperate to find a solution, and I learned about blue light blocking glasses. And I remember that moment very well. I was extremely excited, and I was with my sister and my former partner, and I went to an optometrist office. We bought very expensive clear blue light blocking glasses, and we all left the optometry office with big smiles on our face and fake hope, thinking that we had just solved the light problem, and that we that we had a tool that could protect us in the modern world. And sure enough, within 3 days, we were very disappointed, because nothing had happened, and we were expecting that magic to happen by blocking blue light. But we noticed that our sleep was terrible, and we were waking up feeling exhausted. Nothing had happened, and it hit me very hard, because in that moment I felt a bit embarrassed, because I'm an engineer and I understand the science of light very, very well. And it occurred to me that, according to the physics of light, if you were to try to eliminate the color blue, you need the opposite color, the opposite color on the color wheel, which is essentially orange. And I had realized that, oh my God, like, clear lenses cannot actually work. So at that point, I was really excited to try other brands. And I remember buying yellow tinted glasses from a company, and I was wearing those yellow tinted glasses all day long, from morning to night. And what I had started noticing is that my eye strain and my headache disappeared. I was so happy about it. But then it was very interesting, because I would notice that my energy level throughout the day is very low, and I would feel sleepy when I'm supposed to be feeling alert and energized. And at night, when I'm supposed to feel sleepy, I would feel very, very wired. So I'm like, what is going on? And at that point, I had bought a spectral color meter, which is essentially a tool that allows you to measure the light that is present in any given environment. And that allowed me to experiment. So I bought dozens of different blue light blocking glasses. And one thing I had learned about blue light blocking glasses, the color of the lens matter, and yet it's not a dominant factor that will tell you whether the lenses are effective or not. Because I had seen, for example, orange blue blockers that still leaked a lot of light. And I had seen also red blue blockers that still allowed spikes of blue and green light, which they're not supposed to. So at that point, I was really desperate to find a solution. And I had met an optical engineer from Florida who learned about my story and was really intrigued. So he agreed to help me. And during that time, it was a long process of trial and error. He was essentially working on the melanin pigmentation dye in his lab. He would send me the dyes, and I would run experiments in my garage to tint the lenses and report back to him if they're working or not. And it was 9 months of failing over and over again. And finally, after 9 months, it actually worked. And I got the first Circadian lens, 3 lenses for 3 different times of the day that did exactly what I intended for them to do. So as you can notice, I'm currently wearing the daytime lenses. And during the day, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have in their mind because they think blue light is bad. And blue light is not bad. We need a lot of blue light during the day. Without the blue light, our circadian rhythm cannot be properly reset, and our metabolism cannot be properly activated. So when we wear, for instance, dark yellow tinted glasses during the day, while it helps eliminate eye strain and headaches, it's also essentially eliminating the frequency of blue that our brain is dependent on to reset our circadian rhythm. And it ends up being a lot more destructive than beneficial. So we had to come up with a solution that harmonizes the inflammatory frequency coming from LEDs without eliminating the blue. Now, if you look at the spectral curve of an LED bulb, it essentially has a very narrow spike in blue light. And this spike is not balanced and proportionate with the other frequencies of colors. Whereas if we look at sunlight has full spectrum blue light, and it always comes symbiotically with the color yellow, orange, red, and infrared. They always come together, and never throughout evolution we've been exposed to blue light without the presence of the other colors that balance out the blue. So from that understanding of the science of light, we developed the daytime lens to eliminate the sharpness of the isolative blue light and to spread it across the spectrum. So now it comes with more yellow, orange, and red light during the day. And in this way, we're harmonizing the blue without blocking it. And this essentially eliminate our headaches, our eye strain, and protect our eyes during the day while still allowing us to have optimal energy level because the brain knows it's daytime.
Awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. I just kind of rounding this off because I want to make sure we get to the questions that we have queued up from the audience. So you have your daylight. I put the mid orange, and then you have your deep red. How do you think about what are the times when you should be switching those out?
Yes. So right after the sunset, orange, you think of the firelight. So this is essentially what these lenses do. They mimic the exact color temperature of the fire, eliminate all of the blue. They keep some of the green strategically so that the nervous system wind down and the cells receive a signal that the day is ending. Now, by the end of the bonfire, the wood turns into amber coil. This is when evolutionary we would feel really sleepy. It gets really dark outside. It's the red lenses. So 30 minutes before bedtime, we remove the evening lenses, which they essentially clip seamlessly on the base frame. You remove the evening, you put the nighttime, and those will block all of the blue, all of the green, and will maximize melatonin production so that we can get a proper restful night's sleep.
Awesome. Well, I think I mentioned this, but I'm obviously a customer and love them. I actually have the prescription versions and use them as my daily glasses now, and I use them every night before bed. So thank you. I'm glad we were able to meet you. But like I said, I want to make sure that we get to the audience questions. So we're going to start opening it up. If you do have questions, post them in the comments below. We'll try to get to those questions. If not, we'll make sure to get those over to Roudy to get you answered. But we've got a lot of great questions. So first question from the audience is, for people who work night shifts or late hours on screens, what's the ideal lighting setup or routine?
So for people who work at night, is that somebody who's working night shift, or is that somebody who's just doing a few hours of night screen work before bedtime?
I would say a few hours of night screen. Imagine kind of a busy executive trying to catch up on emails after dinner when the kids go to sleep.
Yeah. So what I would essentially do is, as I'm working on the screen, or anytime really, because like what most people think, they think of artificial light being bad coming from their computer or from their phone. But what we're missing out is all the LED lights that we are exposed to in the streets, in the malls, even in our house, in our living room. And those they emit exactly the same frequency as the frequency that is emitted from the screen. So what I would advise, whether you are working on your computer or not, right after the sunset, circadian biology is expecting a consistent signal of the absence of blue and green light after the sunset. So in order for you to create that environment and have the control over the light that is entering your eyes, the moment the sun sets, I will clip on the evening lenses, and I would keep them on no matter what I'm doing. Perhaps I'm out having some dinner with friends, perhaps I'm working on my computer, or perhaps I'm watching a movie with some friends. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, as long as I'm exposed to any form of artificial lighting after the sunset. I'll make sure that the evening lenses are essentially protecting my eyes and my brain from being confused about the time of the day.
Yeah. And as a person who desperately tries not to do emails at night, but there are times where you just have to do it, that's absolutely what I do. Because I did notice that when I had screen time, say from 7 or 8, had to get something wrapped up, I'd get a little triggered, couldn't get to sleep, restless, anxiety, and the dark shades work great. Next question from the audience: do you think that some of the screen adjustments, i.e., like Mac dark blue light mode on the screen color, depending on the time of day, are helpful?
Yeah. So for the screen modes, there are some softwares that are helpful. The one that I personally use is f.lux, f.lux. And the f.lux takes your geographical location and essentially it attunes your screen's color temperature to the time of the sunset. So the moment the sunset, slowly the screen will start shifting to 2200 kelvins, and then 1800 kelvins, and eventually 1500 kelvins. The drawback from that is that you can go down all the way to 1000 kelvins, which from personal experience, if I'm on a screen that is 1500 kelvins, I would still feel some level of stimulation. And that's why, for instance, if I'm putting the red lenses when I'm working on the screen, I'm dropping the color temperature all the way down to 1000, so I could notice the difference. But personally, I highly recommend f.lux, lux. Also, for people who use iPhone, there's a great trick that you could do to essentially turn the screen of the iPhone red. And there's also a shortcut that you could use to activate the red and remove it. I will share a link to a guide that I had written called The 7 Steps of Harnessing the Power of Light. At the end of the guide, I share a few videos teaching people how to activate those on their iPhone and on the Android, also on the Mac, and on the different software, on the different technologies that people use.
Awesome. Next question. So obviously we do a lot of, at Biocanic, we integrate a lot of the different devices. So the question was, are there specific wearables or tools practitioners can use to track circadian improvements over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the easiest one would be like an Aura ring, for instance. And we have a lot of clients who reach out to us and they share with us their Aura ring scores before and after they have integrated their VivaRays glasses. And often we see like 20, 30, 35% increase in REM and NREM sleep as soon as people start getting their light environments right.
Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that as well. But you said specifically Aura and the REM sleep is what you would be looking for as a metric, right? Not just a total sleep score.
Yeah, even if you have a blood glucose monitor, you could experiment with what happens if you are eating some food in sunlight versus not sunlight. You could also experiment what happens when you to your blood glucose level when you are exposed to artificial blue light without protecting yourself from with using the glasses versus when you are protecting yourself, which you'll probably notice a massive spike in your blood glucose without you eating a single bite when you are exposed to artificial light at night.
Yeah. Next question. How does blue light impact kids and teens differently? Should they be wearing blockers too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a 2024 study that followed children living in areas with high artificial light at night. And they found something that absolutely shatters my heart. So kids who grew up bathed in artificial light, they had 3 times higher rates of attention problems and anxiety and depression compared to kids who grew up in rural areas with less artificial light due to low dopamine level in their brain. So circadian biologist Samer Hatar published a paper showing how very little amount of blue and green light entering our eyes after the sunset activate an area in the brain called the habenula, known as the disappointment center, and it suppresses the release of dopamine the following morning, meaning people will tend to wake up feeling unsatisfied and unmotivated. So I truly think that we're raising the first generation of kids whose developing brain have never, not even once, experienced the true healing power of darkness. And we know that mitophagy, which is the process that allow the mitochondria to replace the old ones that are ineffective with new ones, is essentially controlled by 2 things. 1, UV light from the sun, and second, constantly receiving a proper signal of darkness that activate the mitophagy process. So I believe that the precious mitochondria of those kids are being programmed for failure even before they learn how to tie their shoes, honestly.
Yeah. And then next question, how long does it typically take to see noticeable improvements in sleep and or energy when using quality blockers?
I believe that for the most part, it takes about 3 days when you start getting the proper signaling of light into your eyes. And for the most effective way, I highly recommend that you combine morning sunlight when you first wake up with blocking artificial light right after the sunset. When you do this consecutively for 3 days, you create a new rhythm. And that rhythm essentially will impact every aspect of your hormone. And you'll be able to notice better quality sleep, better digestion, even more energy when you first wake up in the morning. Like the things that are most noticeable for people on the 3rd day is often people will start noticing that their eyes are not burning as much, and they will notice that they wake up feeling a lot more refreshed and energized first thing in the morning.
Yeah. And one comment that you made that I just want to kind of emphasize. So these are blue blockers that are clear. And this actually came up at a melatonin sleep conference, and Sachin Panda was there as well. But, maybe just restate it. Can clear blue blockers actually work?
Absolutely not, because they're blocking blue light up to 420 nanometer in wavelength. And if you measure the light that is coming from the screens and the LEDs, the emission starts at 430 nanometer and spikes at 455 nanometer. So it's like you're trying to rinse your quinoa in a pasta strainer. The quinoa will pass through the holes because you're essentially using the wrong filter. Yeah. And the tragedy beyond this is for people who wear prescription lenses, they put those blue blocker on the prescription and people wear them outside. Now, what's occurring is that people are out in the sun blocking UVA, UVB, and blue-purple light, which are 3 absolutely essential frequencies for dopamine production, for serotonin, for melatonin, for beta endorphins. So it's essentially like not protecting you inside, and it's causing harm outside.
Yeah. And it was such an insight that I learned. So I just wanted to make sure that we said that super clear for the audience, so they understand when they say, hey, we're going to blue blockers on your glasses, it really is counter to what you need.
Yes.
Well, listen, this has been a great discussion. I want to thank everybody that joined us today. If you're watching us as a replay, you can still post questions. We'll make sure to get those answered. But thank you again, Roudy, for joining us. So where can people find out more about you and VivaRays and how to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So visiting our website, VivaRays.com, I will also share with you the link for the 7 steps of harnessing the power of light. They're very simple 7 steps that anybody could do, and they're mostly for free, that have a profound impact on anybody who is willing to implement them. And as I mentioned, at the end of that guide, there's like few helpful videos explaining how to filter the screens. I also explain about what people who wear prescription lenses could do, because we have a technology that allow UV light for prescription users called the 4-in-1 instead of the 3-in-1. You could find out a little bit more about this in the guide. And for anybody who's interested to purchase the glasses, Jeremy, I think you guys have a code with us that will give the audience a 10% discount. I know also that there's a lot of practitioners on the call, so I believe that all of your patients would highly benefit from the technology. So if you want to sign up as an affiliate, there's a link also that Jess could share with you, and you could sign up and have your personal coupon code so that your audience could also benefit from a discount when they purchase the glasses.
Yep. And we'll put those affiliate links in the descriptions for all of the different replays on all the different channels. But this has been a really great discussion. Like I said, I'm #1 customer. So really enjoy your product and really enjoy the science and technology that you put behind it. So, but thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it, Roudy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy. It's a pleasure being with you.
And we'll see you in person here coming up in the fall, right?
Yes, really excited for it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Thanks, everybody.